On my honor, I will never betray my badge, my integrity, my character, or the public trust. I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for their actions. I will always uphold the Constitution, the community, and the agency I serve.
So I want to welcome you to the On the Blue Line podcast. This is episode number 20, and thank you for joining us. Today, I just want to remind you that we are still doing a video version of these, which is available on our YouTube channel, and you can find that, of course, at On the Blue Line. That is our YouTube channel. Just this week, I had a conversation with someone, and they're like, oh, you're doing it in video now also? So this will be our third episode. I do want to warn you on there, we have all the previous episodes in an audio format. The last three are in a video format. So if you do look at some of the other one, but they are in playlist according to audio and video. So I hope you enjoy. The links to all of that, our YouTube channel, all of our social media pages, our closed Facebook group, they're all available in the show notes. So be sure to check that out after each and every episode. That does it for announcements. The Monday morning roll call starts right now. So there's so much negativity in the world today. Just this last week, unless you've been hiding under a rock somewhere, you've probably been watching this foolishness out of New York City where you have the officers, it looks like they were trying to effect an arrest. They just settled down a pretty rowdy crowd of people. And towards the end there, they end up being doused with water. I want to take a look at, there's an article from the New York Daily News, and it says that the New York PD bosses are seeing red in quotation marks after several videos surfaced online of showing the police officers being doused with water by rowdy goons, and in one case hit in the head with a bucket. Which in the video, you see them actually walking away and essentially ignoring them, which some people praised, but definitely the bucket and the water as well in many states, most states that I'm aware of, would be a crime. It's the crime of battery. But for whatever reason, they didn't take any action at that time, probably due to the crowd and community relations and so forth. Which, of course, when you look at what the Police Benevolent Association said in that same article, our anti-cop lawmakers have gotten their wish. The New York PD is now frozen. And it goes on and on with a lot of disparaging terms, which are probably very justified. I don't know. I don't live in New York. But on and on it goes. The videos appear to have been shot in recent days during the city's heat wave. And in one clip, the cops in Brownsville walk away as they're being mocked and drenched with buckets of water. Police sources say the officers were responding to that unruly crowd. And so there's a lot of different videos, and there were some more that came out. And it appears that since then, some arrests have been effected, and some of these guys have been found guilty of what they were doing, and so forth. By contrast, though, the thing is so many of these stories, they end up getting into the media and they permeate social media, and over we hear all these different things, and they get this very negative connotation, this very negative mindset that the whole world's out to get us. Everybody hates law enforcement. There's this, we need to stop that. And there is some of that, and it's certainly growing, and there is this overwhelming disrespect that seems to be much more than it was when I was even a child. I recall very distinctly there was always, the couple people you could trust, and one of them was always the law enforcement officers in uniform. And that was ingrained in me since I was a young child. And clearly, that is not the mindset of a lot of youth that we come into contact with, a lot of juveniles, and a lot of people in this generation. There's been a shift, and we're not going to go down all those roads, and it's no secret to anybody. What I want to talk about, though, is not this negative side, not this story out of New York, but rather the contrast of it. So I think that this total disrespect, this lack of understanding for what officers are trying to do for their communities, it's staggering. But with all this negativity, you begin to wonder, well, does anyone care? Does anyone see or notice that officers every day are trying to make a difference, and that you and I and what we're trying to do on the front lines? And I want to assure you, the reason that I bring this up is because I want you to know that there are caring people out there. There's people out there that are thankful for what law enforcement officers do every day. I know in some of our social media pages, we're linked up with a lot of different live PD fans. And I tell you what, they are some great fans, and I've ran into them on the street and, from all over the United States, and they love that show, and they love what the officers do, and they like the reality of what they get to see out there. And I tell you, it's kind of created a fan base for law enforcement officers. But even beyond that, this week I received in the mail a letter, and it came from a group, which appears to be pretty much this young lady, called Thankful for Our Heroes in Blue. And I received a letter, and I'm going to show it here. I had put it on our social media pages, so you can certainly check it out there. But in here it says a police officer's prayer, and it has a little card that can be taken and put inside your vehicle or kept in your pocket. And have a wonderful day and stay safe. And then it goes on to say, Officer, hello, thank you for everything that you do to keep our community safe. I respect you, support you, and appreciate the sacrifices that you make to keep us all safe. Your commitment, service, and dedication is greatly appreciated. Also thankful for everything you do with On the Blue Line and providing resources and support to our Leos. Please be safe. Your life matters. Thankful for our heroes in blue. And I know that she's sent these out to law enforcement officers all over this country, and possibly one of you listening to us have received one as well. And I just want to say that this is such a neat thing. I love what this individual is doing, and it means a lot to officers to get these little tokens, these little thank yous, these little, hey, we appreciate what you're doing. I don't know how many times in the community in which I work and live that I've been able to go out to restaurants and just random citizens come up and just say, hey, I want to thank you for your service. I want to shake your hand. I want to buy you a cup of coffee. I want to, whatever it is, hey, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate what you're doing. And I think that this negativity that we see with things like this New York situation, keep in mind the number of law enforcement officers and the number of law enforcement interactions across this country every day. And here you have video of one incident. Couple of knuckleheads and how they act and react and the foolishness that they do. That's not normal. Like, that's not the prevailing, and it's definitely not been my experience. I've been very fortunate to work with civilians and community members who love what we do. So I want to encourage you, if you're in law enforcement, to not get so tied down, to get stuck in that rut of everybody hates us. I'm not talking about officer safety here. I'm not talking about, being safe and making sure that, you're paying attention. And that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is that belief that, well, everybody's out to get us. And it just grows in this hatred and this misunderstanding. And all of a sudden, the minute, the small, the things that are not the prevailing become the overwhelming sense of what reality is, and it's really not. There's a lot of support out there. There's a lot of people that love what law enforcement does, and they want you in their community. They want you to continue to do what you do each and every day. So I want to, first of all, encourage you. Second of all, if you're one of the civilians that listen to this show and you're not in law enforcement, chances are, if you're listening to this show, you probably are a law enforcement supporter. You probably say thank you for your service. You probably do these things. You may even send thank you cards to law enforcement officers. But I want to encourage you to keep it up. And I want to tell you how much it means. And I want to say thank you. And I specifically want to say thank you to this young lady with Thankful for Our Heroes in Blue. And of course, I'm going to have all the links in the show notes for that. So this week, what I want to primarily talk about, I had a conversation with someone. And throughout that conversation, we were talking about a lot of these high-profile cases and lawsuits that are taking place across the country. And there was a mention in there on how we used to, in this country, when we would have a problem, when we would find a problem, whatever it was, and I'm talking on a national scale, on a local scale, whatever it was, we would work towards finding a cure. That is how we were so many times able to do things that we were able to do, such as go to space, such as inventions, creating things, building industry. That's what we did. There was a problem. Groups of people would come together, and that would work towards a cure or a solution, something that would take us to the next step. So there's two sides of this equation. There's the focusing on solving the problem, and then there is the taking responsibility to why the problem exists in the first place. So what's changed in culture and in society? And the way we see it, or the way we saw it in our conversation, was it's changed when we find a problem. Now we have to find someone to blame. It can't be our fault anymore. It has to be somebody else's fault. And there's a lot of different ways we could go with this conversation and a lot of different arguments, because just because there is a problem doesn't mean maybe someone isn't at fault. But the focus should be on solving that problem. Now we have to find someone to blame. It's no longer about solving the problem and learning from it. It's all about lawsuits, and are we going to benefit from that lawsuit? When a product, a drug, a piece of equipment, whatever it is, doesn't work or operate in the way that we believe it should, we don't work together to make it better. Or companies, organizations. In fact, in some ways they can't. No, everyone starts suing each other, and they start blaming each other. Production comes to a stop. Now, I'm not talking about intentional shortcuts or true neglect, irresponsibility, or intentional lack of oversight. That's not what I'm talking about. No, I'm talking about true mistakes and an unwillingness to accept that human involvement is not perfect. Surprise. I mean, we're going to make mistakes. I know I make mistakes, and I'm assuming you probably make mistakes. And there's this unwillingness to accept that anytime there's human involvement, that mistakes are going to happen. And things we make and things that humans design and build, they're going to be flawed. Why are they flawed? Because we're fallible people. And we have to learn to accept responsibility. But the flip side of that coin is that people, businesses, agencies, they cannot and should not be scared to accept responsibility. And yet they are, for good reason, because now what's going to happen? They're going to get sued. If something was done in good faith and it just doesn't work out, then why can't it be a learning experience? A growth of knowledge and innovation should swell up from this failure and better mankind for the future. I mean, is that not the point of life? Is that not the point of learning? Is that not the point of almost everything we do? But sadly, rarely does this ever happen. Companies and individuals are sued, and they do not want to take responsibility, of course, maybe for their own legal protection. And of course, they're fined so heavily that everyone suffers. The company loses, the employees lose, the customers lose, everyone loses. And they often are financially losing as well. And no knowledge or wisdom was gained from the experience. See, even in our own lives, we rarely want to take responsibility for our own actions. And it doesn't have anything to do with our fear of being litigated often. The problem lies in human nature. It's in this lack of willingness to be accountable for our own actions and to change in a culture where we no longer come together as a community or as a tribe to solve the problem at hand. In fact, there's an article in Psychology Today by Dr. Susan Whitbourne, and she talks about this idea of why we blame others, and she outlines these 5 reasons as to why people play what she calls the blame game. First of all, she says that blame is an excellent defense mechanism. You know, whether you call it projection, denial, displacement, whatever you want to call it, it's a way of defending yourself. You avoid the awareness of your own failings, your own failures in life. And instead, you're going to just pass the blame to someone else. But the problem with that is when we pass that blame to someone else and we don't take that self-awareness and say, okay, what can I do with this? Then nothing good comes of it. We don't learn from that experience. It's not Edison failing on the light bulb. We just refuse to take it to the next level that could actually lead to our success down the road. That's the whole idea of failure. Failure leads to success when you learn from failure. So blame is not a tool that we use when we're in attack mode. Falling into the category of destructive conflict resolution method, blame is our way to hurt our partner. So in other words, sometimes it's a way that we protect ourselves by attacking others. We want to say, well, it's not my fault, it's your fault. It's not me, it's you. That's that whole idea that we want to take it and redirect it, and it becomes part of our attack. She also pointed out that we're not very good at figuring out the causes of other people's behavior or even our own. So whether the attributions that we make, whether to luck or ability, they can be distorted by our tendency to make illogical judgments. And in turn, we're just as bad at making judgments involving blameworthiness as the actions in terms of intent versus outcome. So in other words, it's easier, we're not making a good judgment on this anyway, so it's easier to say, well, clearly it wasn't what I did, it's what you did that caused this to not work. But again, that same negative reaction takes place. Number 4, she states that it's easier to blame someone else than to accept responsibility. And that's my entire point. That's the entire point of this conversation, is that it's easier to say, well, it's not my problem. But if you'll stay involved, if you'll say, yes, I'd take part of responsibility to whatever that failure was, and then say, what can we do to learn from this? And work together instead of assigning blame. It has to be somebody's fault. No, what can we do to make this work? What can we do to bring this to the next level? And when we do that in our personal lives, it can help us become the person that we're setting out to be, the person that we were meant to be. The other thing she states is people lie. Just simply people lie. People are dishonest. And in doing that, it's easy when you're being dishonest to say, well, it wasn't me, it was them. And to kind of, it's like the kid with the hand in the cookie jar. Well, it wasn't me, it was little brother, even though you got the crumbs dribbling off your chin. You don't learn from mistakes when you lie about them. And obviously that takes into a whole integrity sentence and a whole integrity thought process, which we've talked about in the past, and which is integral to law enforcement. So we're not going to go down that road. But just understand that there's reasons why people play this blame game, why they don't want to take responsibility and point it onto others. But ultimately, everything in life comes down to a choice, and it's a choice that each of us must make. We must first choose to accept responsibility for the failure, and then choose to work together to find the cure, to find the solution, to use failure as the catalyst for later successes in life. When we do this, we're not only showing a higher level of maturity, but we continue to grow and develop into who we were meant to be. So with that does it for this week's Monday Morning Roll Call. Please check out the show notes and follow the links. I hope you'll go to our website, ontheblueline.com, where many of these links and more information is available. I want to thank you for listening. Have a great week. I'll see you next Monday morning at Roll Call, and in the meantime, I'll see you out there on the Blue Line.